What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 50. 50, man. I'm super excited, dude. I didn't think I was going to make it to 50 episodes, and here we are. It's brought to you by the Antisocial Network. Today, I have a very, very cool special guest. His name is Joe Ambridge. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good, thank
What?
you. Thanks for having me on.
How? How is life in Melbourne? I've talked to somebody before and I'm pretty sure that you've that you know who I'm talking about, Metzi, and she
Yeah,
has a different perspective when it comes to Melbourne. What is your experience in Melbourne, man?
it's a very friendly city. I've definitely found. I'm originally from London. You can probably tell from the accent,
Yeah,
but the cultural differences and everything. Everyone's really friendly. I find, in comparison to where I used to live, people talk to each other that even if you don't know them. I found that really nice that everyone talks to everyone. People seem to be very antisocial in London. You either get a dirty look or people just ignore you.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, I've been to London before, and I had a really cool experience. Whereabouts in London did you live?
Not far from Wimbledon tennis, probably about half an hour from Wimbledon tennis.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got to go visit Queen Victoria's castle and Hyde Park and stuff like that, and some of the attractions around there, and that was pretty cool.
yeah. Very
Yeah,
good tourist locations.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I was doing touristy things. I didn't get to see some of the really cool stuff, and I got to see Buckingham Palace and a few other places. I had a really good time when I was there. But it's not about me; it's about you. Joe, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Joe. I'm originally from London. I've lived in Melbourne for like last 4 years now. I've done a bit here and there with a lot of stuff around mental health. Used to be the host of a podcast called #Never Alone, which I started off as a director, moved into the host role with my friend Mark, who's based in the UK. And we recently transitioned into the new name, which is #Psychotherapy Unfogged, which I'm now the producer for because I was busy with other projects. So I just produce and edit and do all the promotional stuff for that now.
Very nice, man. So what brought you from London to Melbourne? Because like that's a huge transition, man. That's a massive. It's like you don't wake up one morning and go, I think today I'm just gonna move to Melbourne. You know?
No. Without trying to sound too cheesy, I met my soulmate, love of my life, over in London. She was teaching. We met via Tinder, which is obviously quite normal these days. People meet via dating apps. I met her, and then she moved back here, and just didn't want to be that far away from her, so I moved over here to live. And I've been back once since because of COVID and stuff. So I went back recently this year, but yeah, I finally settled in. I've got friendship group and everything now, and family. Yeah, that's the reason I moved, because of her. And I was just looking to move away from London because I was getting fed up with doing the same thing all the time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's quite the love story. I
Yeah,
like hearing that. I like hearing it, man. Recently made a huge move. I went from Alaska to West Virginia. I mean, I stayed in the same continent. You you went time zones,
yeah,
huge time zones away. So not
yeah.
quite the same. You made more of a big move than I did. That's pretty awesome, man. How was a transition for you going from London, where it's very fast paced and where there's just a ton of people. I don't know what Melbourne's like, but what was the transition like for you going from London to Melbourne?
Well, it was quite difficult at the start because like it was almost like I was restarting my life. I moved here, obviously no friends or anything or family apart from my partner and then my partner's family, who'd only just met when I moved in their house. So I went from living with my parents and my sister and no pets to living with about 7 other people, including a baby and 3 dogs and 2 cats. So it was a bit different.
Wow.
it's a lot more relaxed here compared to London, where like you get a lot of rude people. I'm sure my family and friends will agree. Like no one talks to, as I mentioned before, no one talks to anyone on the train.
Yeah.
Um, People just got their heads in their phones, not looking where they're going. Um, and I just found myself increasingly frustrated constantly living in London. It just had that vibe that I just felt down and I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. And then I moved here. I struggled at the start because it's just completely different here compared to London. But I'm a lot more settled now. I've got, as I mentioned before, I've got my friendship groups. I've met a lot of people. Everyone's a lot friendlier here. Um, I've kind of adjusted to the culture. I think the good thing is obviously it's an English speaking country as well, so it's a bit different apart from maybe a few different words that might be in their lingo compared to the
Yeah.
English accent or the English lingo.
Yeah. That's that's awesome, man. It's always it's cool to see people's transformation when they go from one situation to another or one country to another. It's pretty cool to see how they adjust and how they manage their life. What is one of your favorite things about Melbourne?
Oof, that's a tough question. I think probably I wouldn't say the weather because the weather changes every 4 seconds, but I think just the general culture and stuff and how relaxed it is. Kind of don't feel like there's this constant pressure on you to meet this idealization of a person. Whereas in London, you kind of feel like everyone's almost judging you all the time.
Yeah.
Definitely found. Whereas here, it's a lot more chilled. Like everyone talks to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I can completely understand. I can completely understand. So let's get into it real quick, man. What was it like growing up in London for you?
Ooh, I think my childhood was pretty good. Like my parents have been still together, and I got really well with my sister. Like my sister always used to look out for me. We used to play on the streets and play football or soccer, as they call it in Australia or America. We used to play on the streets till the street lights used to come on and go and play in the park. And obviously, like kids can't do that nowadays because of all the dangers and everything. I was a lot of bullying and stuff in school, which I found. Obviously, this affected me a lot now in later life, but I think other than that, I quite enjoyed like my childhood. I had a pretty easygoing childhood.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah. Um, you mentioned that kids now can't go out to the street. Street lights come on, and my girlfriend and I were actually just talking about that last night. How we used to stay out until the street lights came on, and our parents would say don't come inside unless there's blood or vomit. you know, like now kids can't really do that, and that's terrible because the experiences that we had when we're kids they may not be able to experience
Yeah,
the good ones.
yeah, I definitely find kids more inside people, and it does affect people's socializing. Like my nephew, he plays out on the street, plays soccer, or plays footy, like AFL rules footy. He loves to play with his ball and stuff with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law and my other brother-in-law. He likes to play because they live in quite a quiet court where he lives, and where we used to live before when we lived with my partner's parents. They lived in quite a quiet court, so it was easy to play out on the streets and not worry about anyone coming in taking your child or whatever. But definitely
Yeah.
in London, I feel like you probably wouldn't be able to do that nowadays.
No, probably not. Probably not. You had mentioned that bullying was a affected you later on in life. How did that affect you later on in life?
I definitely feel like it's kind of shaped my personality. It's made me a bit of a stronger person now. I don't let people's like bad opinions and stuff, affect me as much as it would before. Like I was definitely an emotional person as a child because I was diagnosed with dyspraxia when I was young, so that affects your coordination, your motor growth skills, and like your emotions. So I was a very emotional child. So I used to let things get to me a lot more than other kids maybe would, and that it's where kids kind of used to take advantage of that. Um, that's kind of led to me having like anxiety and depression, and I didn't value myself very highly because obviously kids can be very judgmental when you're that age. Um, and I definitely feel now, like after probably years of therapy and years of handling and learning about my mental health and how to handle it, has made me value myself a lot more. And obviously having a partner now as well, my fiance definitely helps me not get down on myself about how I look or how I am as a person.
Yeah, yeah. That kids are really judgmental, and I feel like they've gotten worse over time. I've
Yeah,
heard some of the things that come out of kids' mouths, and I'm like, if I ever said that when I was a kid,
yeah,
Dad would have cracked me over the back of the head. And I think just over time that the evolution of humanity and stuff, and the things that we see on and media and stuff like that really is shaping the kids to be a little bit more harsh and more judgmental.
yeah.
Um, that's pretty hard to handle. I dealt with a bit of bullying when I was younger because I was always the weird outcast. I had these big pink glasses, man. My grandma, my grandma was like, "You're gonna wear those," so I had like huge pink glasses. And what young boy wants to wear pink glasses?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, man. Moving on. How did depression and anxiety start to shape how you interacted with people?
Um, I definitely feel I let people's opinions affect me a lot more, and I kind of was quite paranoid that people were talking about me or worried about what people thought of me. Um, and when you're that age, and people, I definitely find kids like to spread rumors and stuff, and kids obviously believe it a lot more. I had stuff said about me in college that spread round, and then it came back to me, and I was just like, no, that's not true. Um, and then also, I feel like it started to show itself a bit more when I started to reach like my teen years, when I reached being like 18 and stuff, and when I was nearing the end of college. That it started to show it. I was struggling a lot more with um, people. Obviously, you're growing up, your body's changing, everyone's starting to look different. Some people might be taller than other people, some people might be put on weight or have muscle and stuff. And I was generally not in that group of, oh, I'm muscly or I'm popular or anything. I was always just in my own little group, and I had my select group of friends. Um, and it started to kind of show itself when I turned 18. I was struggling a lot, and then I started having these dizzy spells, um, and weren't sure what it was at the start. So I went to see the doctor. They did all these tests, and I just spoke about everything, like everything that had affected me when I was younger, that had been self-harming, um, and I just felt like life wasn't worth it anymore. Um, and he diagnosed me with anxiety and depression, and very kindly, like, because I was scared to tell my mum, because my mum didn't know any of this stuff. Like when you're young age, you're going through mood swings, you're going through all this stuff. It just might be part of that. You would never thought, oh, it's depression. I didn't really know much about mental health at that age, um, and the doctor had invited my mum in to come and chat with him and just explained everything. Um, and from then, I kind of started seeing a therapist. And that just helps hugely, just to notice all these little things about myself that led to me having depression, having anxiety.
Yeah, what were some of those things that you started to notice in retrospect that led up to that diagnosis?
Um, I was struggling a lot at work. I was having all these what I thought were panic attacks. Like, um, I just started a new job when I was 18. Like maybe like a few months after I finished college, I started my first job in a supermarket. I was doing fine for ages, and then I just started having these dizzy spells, getting really flustered and everything, and struggling to breathe. And I remember one day it just kind of was the big sign. I was working on the kiosk, like cigarette counter, turned around to pick some cigarettes up out of the drawer and turned back around and nearly fainted. Um, and I just kept having these dizzy spells from then onwards. And then the doctor obviously diagnosed me with anxiety and depression.
How did the depression shape your mental health? Because I know what it did for me, and I'll share after. But how did it shape your mental health? When you started getting that diagnosis.
Um, Hard to say. Probably, I was a lot more open about my mental health after I was diagnosed because I understood it a bit more after the doctor explained it to me, and I'd started seeing a therapist. Um, I definitely was a bit more aware of these things that were affecting me, and the way I let people treat me as well.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Um, Before my diagnosis of depression, man, when I was doing it, I didn't realize it, but I would sit on in my chair and just stare blankly at a blank TV. You know what I mean? Like get
Yeah,
lost for hours, and I couldn't account for the time. Um, and just nothing was appealing to me, man. And I was having to explain this to somebody yesterday because they said, I don't understand how you could just do that. Like, what were you
yeah,
so sad about? And I was like, when you have depression, you don't know why you're sad. You don't know why you're upset. It's just there. It's just this emptyless pit that you're in, and you can't find a way out.
yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. So what was kind of the nexus for you to get to that point where you said, okay, something needs to change in my life?
Um, I think just going through all these struggles and never like doing all the stuff that should be making me happy, and it wasn't, and I generally didn't feel happy. I had friends and stuff, and I had a lot of friends. I was enjoying my time with them. I was going out and still doing stuff, but I'd go home and I just feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or why did that person say that, or how did they find that out, or like just questioning all these things about myself and being really emotional afterwards, like
Yeah,
crying and stuff. And unfortunately, people used to take advantage of that and stuff and try to embarrass me. And then obviously looking back now, like I didn't. I'm glad I cut them out of my life.
yeah. I'm glad you did too. I'm glad you did
Mm.
too. So I know for me that it was really hard to find happiness and joy, and you spoke about that. Uh, it just one of those hard to find like an overall sense of happiness or joy, or was it you had momentary glimpses of happiness and joy, but overall it was just rough.
I feel like I was happy when I was out doing stuff with my friends, but when I was alone or doing like talking to people, back then we had MSN and stuff, and um, Facebook was kind of relatively new. I just felt like with all my friends having girlfriends and stuff when I was younger, and me never having a girlfriend, um, and kind of everyone was getting into relationships, and I just couldn't find
Yeah,
anyone, or when I was with someone, it just didn't work out. I definitely found when I was alone was the worst time, especially when I was at college. Because I'd come home during the day, and my parents would be at work. I'd finish my lessons and come home, and then I'd be sat on MSN talking to my friends, and we'd be talking about something that happened that day. And then if there was a girl that I liked and they didn't like me back, that used to get me down a lot more than probably most people would.
yeah, yeah. It's that sense of acceptance, man. Like wanting to feel accepted by someone. I can relate to that, man.
Yeah.
Definitely. So when did things start to turn around for you?
Um, it's been a bit up and down. I think not until maybe the last few years, maybe 2018, I had a big breakdown or something. when I first originally moved here, I had a mental breakdown. We had a load of issues and stuff. I just moved in with my partner's family, and we weren't getting on. We'd never lived together, and we were arguing a lot. And we just weren't getting on, and I ended up having a mental breakdown because it was almost like the trigger point was that, because I didn't realize mentally I wasn't doing that well until that happened. Um, and I spent a bit of time in a mental health ward, and I came out, started kind of on the road to recovery, went home back to London for a bit, and I did a self-esteem workshop, and that's when I kind of set myself this goal of I never want to get back to that place where I feel like I want to end my life. I want to end up back in the mental health ward, because it was probably one of the worst times of my life, even though it was what set me on my journey to get better. Um, and definitely when I'm like more often than not now, when I'm feeling depressed or I feel like my medication is not working, I notice it straight away and I start to deal with it a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. I can understand that, and I can relate to that all too well. What were some of the things that you learned when you first started your road to recovery about yourself?
The way I let people treat me, like people I'd call friends, and the stuff they would say to me that I would pass off as like banter and stuff that maybe wasn't quite like nice. I'd just accept it because I wanted to be friends with these people. They were my friends. They didn't mean anything by it. It's just banter. And then looking back, and I think like the way I just used to accept things just to be part included in stuff. Um, I also learned to value myself, like kind of tell myself I was enough, that I've done all these good things in life that other people might not have done. I had family and friends, like my parents are still together. I had a good, my sister, I got on really well with my sister and everything. Um, and the fact that I had a girlfriend as well, like the fact that someone can love me as well, love me for myself, that made me realize, okay, maybe I am enough. Maybe people love me, so I should love myself.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's a lesson that I've just recently learned, that I have to love myself. That's hard. That is really hard. Um, so, what are some of the coping skills that you picked up along the way to help you get into a better place when you're kind of not in a place you want to be?
I think self care is very important. Like you need to look after yourself when you're struggling sometimes. Like um, I've struggled a bit recently. Like my partner's not well. She got diagnosed with cancer recently, last year, and like I'd been coping fine. Like loads of stuff had happened last year. My nan passed away. One of our family dogs died, and then my partner got diagnosed with cancer. And like I dealt really well, considering normally I'm quite an emotional person and would normally struggle, especially like having borderline personality disorder. So my mood would fluctuate from one extreme to the next, but I'm medicated for that now. And I'd done so well. And then like the last few weeks, I kind of felt flat and stuff, and almost like, okay, I've made sure everyone else was happy and coping okay, but I've not actually taken a moment to reflect about, am I doing okay physically, and am I looking after myself? Um, and it kind of caught up with me and took that emotional toll. So at the moment, I'm kind of just taking a bit of time to myself. My partner's away at the moment, but I've just taken this time to do little baby steps and stuff, not push myself too much to do something to make myself go backwards.
Yeah.
Um, uh, just doing things I enjoy and stuff, and that's kind of helped me reset a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. You had a lot going on last year, man. I think last
Yeah,
year was rough for a lot of us. It's weird. It's weird. Like everybody I talked to said 2021 was like one of my worst years. I was like, yeah, same.
yeah,
It was pretty rough.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's some really good things that happened that year too. So what are you doing now to help other people out?
I back in 2019, like I started a mental health podcast called Hashtag Never Alone. It was a video podcast that was on YouTube. It started off really well and everything. We did like a few episodes just before the pandemic started. And then that moved on to online doing Zoom video calls, things that ended up on YouTube and stuff. And our host pulled out because she had like other stuff in her life going on. So I took over as a host, and one of my friends who's based in the UK that I know from one of my previous jobs, he's a psychotherapist. Um, he came on as co-host, and we did. I'm trying to think quite a few episodes on the video, and then eventually we made a decision to move on to audio to get like a wider range of listeners. And last year, I stepped back from the podcast because I just didn't have the time or like commitment to be able to, or the time to commit to it and record, find a time that worked for my time zone and my co-host's time zone, and then obviously the guest time zone. Um, and then edit it and get it out on time and do all the promotional stuff. So I stepped back and I'm now the producer. We finished, I think we got halfway through season 3 or something. And we then transitioned into a new name with a new logo. And my co-host now hosts it by himself. It's now called #Psychotherapy Unfold. We just wrapped up the 3rd season, going on to season 4, on 3.7k plays now. We've got listeners all over funny enough, like most of our listeners are actually in the US, the highest percentage, which is quite funny. I do have friends in the US, but I was quite surprised that was our highest percentage. I've done some other projects as well. I've done two anxiety documentaries. One where I had interviews with people with anxiety, just talking about their experience and how it's affected their life, how they cope. And then the second one was an interview with the now host of the podcast. He was talking about anxiety from a professional perspective. Yeah, so I've done quite a lot. We've done like the podcast and the films. I'm in the process of writing, or in the process of being in pre-production for a film about suicide awareness at the moment, which is hoping to shoot soon and release this year.
Nice. Yeah, let's talk about the pandemic real quick, man. I know that the pandemic messed with a lot of people's mental health. Did it have an effect on your mental health?
Surprisingly, I mean, other than struggling to find a job and stuff like that, I think having mental health, already having like mental health issues, I think it kind of prepared me for it because having mental health, you expect the worst, so you're prepared for the worst. I think the hardest part was not being able to see family because my sister-in-law, my nephew, and my brother-in-law moved out just at the peak, like the start of the pandemic. They moved out, and then they were outside the radius. And I don't know if you know that Melbourne was one of the most affected cities in the world. We had the longest lockdown ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a struggle not being able to see anyone, and I hadn't seen my family for like 3 years before last year. Back home or any of my friends. But no, I did pretty well, I think, just because you're kind of almost prepared for the worst having mental health. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
nothing new.
I can relate to that completely, man. Like I was perfectly okay being by myself, being alone. It didn't bother me. I actually quite enjoyed being alone. You know what I mean? Like I was like, man, you know, I have to worry about other people. You know, interacting with other people. But then on sets, that ideology where I have to be alone. Now that
Yeah.
everything is starting to calm down, did you come to that point where you're like, I have to be alone in order to be okay?
Yeah, well, I lived with, at the time when we had the pandemic, I lived with I was with my partner and her parents. It was just us and two of the dogs. Um, so it was just us. So I always had company, which was good. I did a lot of stuff with my partner, but I was quite happy to just sit and chill and like sit and play PlayStation or something, or take the dogs for a walk. I did quite a lot of photography during the pandemic as well. I'd go to like a local park and take photos just to get like my exercise in. And did a lot of projects. We were doing the podcast during the pandemic. And I also worked as like a contact tracing person, like a contact tracing officer. So I used to have to call people up and tell them they had COVID or they had to isolate or they were allowed out of out of isolation.
Oh wow. Well,
Yeah.
how was that being a contact officer? You know, when during COVID, was that mentally taxing, or was that kind of easy for you?
Some days were hard. I think like at the start when you were just having call after call, having to call people, but like a lot of people quite accepting. You did have the odd people that were angry and frustrated that they had to isolate. The company I worked through, they had a lot of good mental health resources, and the team leaders would check in on you and stuff. And if you needed 5 minutes to yourself after a call, you could just let them know and just take some time away from the computer.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So, what are you doing now to help yourself and to keep yourself in check?
I'm doing stuff I enjoy, like doing the film stuff that I'm doing at the moment. Um, my partner's away, so I tend to call her every. I've called her every night and stuff to chat to her. Taken my dogs for a walk. Set myself like little goals every day to do, even if it's tiny little things like doing the washing or getting out of the house for 5 minutes. And I've felt that's obviously like helped a lot. I'm starting to feel a bit more like myself. I've started taking a journal where it has this app on your phone and it tells you what are you grateful for, like three things you're grateful for, and then at the end of the day, it messages you again things that you think could have done to make today better. What goals have you achieved today? And but I've definitely felt that that's helped a lot, being able to just recenter yourself.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree. I've heard that journaling works for a lot of people. I have never done journaling, but I've heard that it helps a lot of people. What does it do for you?
I think it makes you value the small things, like things you might not think of, like even tiny things like what you're grateful for. Like for me, most of the days it's my family, my friends, my partner, my dogs. Um, it's like the little things you realize that you have in your life that make life better. Also, looking back at the little goals you set that you might do one thing more the next day, like, oh, I did a walk around the block with the dogs. And then the next day I've done a bigger walk around the block. You kind of just setting yourself those little goals, and then it's almost like you're rewarding yourself. You say, "Oh, good, well done, you've done that. You've pushed yourself to do something else today." And like, even if you don't do the thing the next day, you do like a walk around the block, and then the next day, okay, I'm not feeling up for it. Let's do something else. That's okay. It's almost like you're telling yourself it's okay to not push yourself too much.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned playing video games. I'm a little bit of a gamer myself. What games are you playing now?
At the moment, I've just finished Horizon Forbidden West. I've just finished that one. I'm playing The Quarry, and I've just started a game called Beyond Two Souls, but Ellen Page and Willem Dafoe in it.
Oh,
And
nice.
you play this girl who's got like a demon or a paranormal entity attached to her, and it helps her like
Wow,
out of these situations. And everything. It's a really good game. Definitely
that's
recommend it.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. What about the quarry? I've heard a lot of different mixed reviews about the quarry. What do you
Yeah,
feel?
so far
How do you
it's
feel
got
about that?
quite a big cast. Like it's got people like Ariel Winter in it, Justice. I can't remember Justice Smith. I think his name is Brenda Song. It's got quite a big cast in it, but Gary. I think Gary Sinise is in it as well.
Wow.
I played this Until Dawn, which is like the same company. It's like a horror game, and all these choices you make affect how the game plays out.
Mhm.
Um, and I really enjoyed that. So I started playing the Quarry. It's something I wanted to play for a while, and it was a free game with PlayStation Plus. And that's kind of the similar thing. Like there's like a group of people that are at this camp and they stay, and then all this stuff starts happening. All these decisions you make affect the storyline.
Hmm. Nice, nice. When did you get into gaming?
From a young age, I think my first console was a Game Boy Color. I had Pokemon Yellow and just absolutely
Nice.
loved. That was probably one of my favorite games I've ever played. Um, but like even before that, like we had neighbors on our street that used to have like N64 and stuff. Used to play Super Mario. Then the first actual game console we had was a PS1. Used to play Crash Bandicoot and stuff like that. And I used to play with my sister as well. I think that was like really good because it was something we both enjoyed doing, and it's where we bonded. And
That's
like, I had a lot of
awesome.
friends that used to play games and stuff, and used to go to their house and play video games.
Nice, nice. Yeah, right now I'm a huge professional wrestling fan, so I have WWE 2K23, and my always go to is Minecraft. I will play Minecraft until the day that I die, or
Yeah,
until they know what they take it off the market, and it's no
yeah,
longer able to be played. I love Minecraft.
yeah,
But I think so. My first recollection, well, a few of my first recollections in life. One of them was playing George Foreman's Knockout
yeah,
on the old Nintendo, the very first one that came out,
yeah,
and then a little bit later on in life, we had a Nintendo 64 and then a Dreamcast, and then it kind of moved on from there. I started playing more games when I joined the army, and it's kind of evolved from there. I switched from PlayStation to Xbox. Well, I went from Xbox to PlayStation to Xbox.
yeah.
So I've touched a little bit of everything, man.
That was me. I went PlayStation, Xbox, and then went back to PlayStation. I've been
Nice.
on
Not.
PlayStation since.
I actually went to a small little, like, I guess, like, collectible store.
Yeah,
Not like a few weeks ago, and they had like 5 or 6 Nintendo 64s, and I was like, oh, I need to go
well,
buy one.
yeah. I love all of
Yeah.
the old retro stuff. Like, um, I used to have a Nintendo Switch before I sold it, and my nephew's got one now. And I said to my brother-in-law, who's his dad, I was like, "Oh, they've got all the old retro Nintendo games on there, like Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Snap and stuff." And that's part of the reason why I bought Switch, just for the old school games. I didn't care about the new ones.
Now, you talked about Pokemon, so I have to ask, did you
Yeah,
get into Pokemon Go?
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I definitely found it was pretty good. Like, there was a whole thing on it about how it helped people with mental health. I definitely got out of the house a lot more playing Pokemon Go, and like when I first came back to Melbourne in 2019, Pokemon Go was still quite popular, and I joined quite a few of the Facebook groups, and I met so many people through that and made friends. And like a lot of my friends played it, so we'd go out and go to all these places and stuff back when they still had like the Pokemon tracker maps before
Yeah.
they took it down. We used to just go to all these places and capture all the stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just I definitely found it got me out of the house a lot, so I used to play it a lot.
Dude, the Pokemon craze when it first came out in, like, I think it was 2016,
Yeah,
insane. Absolutely insane. I lived in North Carolina at the time, and the city that I lived in, um, nobody ever visited historic downtown, of that
yeah,
city. And when I was walking downtown playing, you just seen thousands of people out and
yeah.
about just playing Pokemon. And for once, I felt like that kind of brought the world together.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I found that like I remember when it first came out, like you go out and all these people, you get to the location here, oh, just be a couple of people, and it's just like all these people there playing, and just everyone used to just talk to each other.
Mhm.
Um, I spent a lot of time with friends that like they probably normally wouldn't hang out with. Like people I met through other people. Like, oh, you doing this? Are you going to this raid today and stuff? And I'd go and catch up with them, and would go and play, and like it's definitely helped me here a lot. Like I've seen a lot more of the city that I probably wouldn't have seen. Um, um, one thing I really wanted to do was go to Santa Monica Pier.
Yeah.
See, I saw all these YouTubers going there, and the amount of like Pokemon that spawn.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have definitely, played Pokemon in just about every location, even where I'm at now, and
Yeah,
and I've enjoyed it. Even now, years later. I mean, we're 7 years after it came out, and I'm still enjoying playing.
yeah,
Obviously, the game's changed a little bit, but um, still, nonetheless, it's super fun, and it's like cool for generations to follow. Like, my
yeah,
my girlfriend's daughter, she's like, "Oh, you're playing Pokemon? Let me play. Here, have my phone. Let's go
yeah.
play." So it's a real cool bonding experience, and I found it really enjoyable. That I've never spent more time out of the house as an adult than playing Pokemon.
Yeah, me too. Like, I remember my partner's dad used to take the mick out of me for playing it when I first came here to go out and play it. And like, you know what? I don't care because it's got me out of the house and I've met people that I probably wouldn't have gone and like met before, and I've
Yeah,
made friends.
yeah, and that's what it's all about, man. Going out there, making friends, and
Yeah.
having fun. So, Joe, two questions before we go. First one, um, what are you grateful for today?
What am I grateful for today? I think the fact that um, there's always a hard thing to think. I think probably my fiance and stuff, and the fact that she's getting better is big thing that I'm grateful for. The fact that I've got supportable family, like family that are supportive. Like both my family and friends always check in and stuff and see how we're going and how my partner's going. I'm grateful for that, and probably my dogs because they always cheer me up.
That's
They're very good
awesome.
therapy dogs. Even my actual dog, like she's normally not aware when you're sad or anything, but she's been really good lately. Like the last few days, she's been very affectionate towards me,
That's
like
awesome.
making sure I'm okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, my girlfriend is a dog groomer, so I'm around dogs all the time, all the
Yeah.
time. And she has two here at the house, and I was never a dog person before I met her, and I love dogs now. Like absolutely love
Yeah.
them.
Same with
You
me.
know,
Like I used to be scared of big dogs, and then I moved into my partner's house, well, my partner's parents' house, and the dog who sadly passed away last year. And I remember I sat on the sofa and she came and jumped on the sofa and sat right on top of me, and I was like, you know what, like dogs, these aren't scary. Like she ended up being my favorite dog ever because she's the reason why I like dogs. And I remember she passed last year, and I was just absolutely devastated because even though I've got my own dog, she's always been my favorite because she just knew how to make me happy and the reason I like dogs. And for her, like I'm forever grateful that she did that, came and sat on me, covered me
yeah,
in hair, but like she was just in her own little world, which was adorable.
yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. My girlfriend has a big dog, a big German Shepherd, and she just loves to cuddle, man. And I don't think that big dogs realize how big they actually are.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, they see you, this bigger, taller person than them, and they're like, "Oh, well, here, let me hold a little space on their lap," but it's the whole place.
Yeah, our dogs definitely do that.
Yeah, yeah. And okay, so last question before we go: what advice would you give to somebody, or suggestion that you would give to somebody that's currently struggling with either with bullying or depression or anxiety or any mental health disorder? What advice would you give them?
I think it's something I always tell people to speak to someone. I know it's really difficult, but that's the first big step is to speak to someone and get the help you need. We always say this on the podcast: speak to someone and get the help you need because that's your first step on your road to recovery. Your first step on getting the help, and from there onwards, even if you're just saying to a friend, "Oh, I'm struggling," they might then say, "Oh, I actually noticed that. How can I help?" Or do you want me to tell someone, or do you, they might be struggling with their own thing and they might have gone through the same thing, gone, oh, I can recommend going and speak to a doctor or something like that. Because I've definitely found for myself, once I started speaking more openly about mental health and talking myself, a lot of my friends will come into me and say, oh, I actually struggle with mental health, how do you deal with it and stuff like that. And I've given them advice to say, go and speak to someone, go speak to your doctor, see a therapist. Like, you don't necessarily have to see a therapist. You can chat to your doctor and they can recommend stuff for you. Like therapy, I've found has been very helpful to me. Like you definitely acknowledge a lot of stuff about yourself. Like when I did the self-esteem workshop, I thought, oh, I don't struggle with self-esteem and all that. Probably won't help me that much. And then I came out of that workshop like, wow, okay, I didn't know that about myself. I need to stop doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. When
I
you
mean,
become vulnerable, and you open up to certain things, you don't realize like, holy crap, like this actually did affect me the way that I didn't think it did.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Joe. I want to say thank you for hanging out with me and sharing your story and sharing your experience, man. You are a huge inspiration. I hope you know that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me
And
on.
and no problem, no problem. And I just like I'm absolutely astonished by your story. And man, you moved across continents, man. That's awesome.
We
I'm
do
still
crazy things for love.
We do. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, Joe, thank you. Thank you for being on. Thank you for hanging out with me and talking to me for this
Um,
little bit. And everybody, thank you for being here and listening to Joe and listening to his story. Joe's an inspiration to me, and we'll definitely keep everybody in the loop on how he's doing. So, till next time, much love.
Thank you.